Join us on Happy Looming, where we come together to talk about looms, yarn, and the joy of creating. We are so excited. Today we have Renita Harvey with us, and she is the creator of the KB Flexee loom. And we're so excited. Yay!
Yay!
Renita, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was born and raised in Arkansas, as you can tell from my voice, and I have been all over the place with everything. I've learned crochet from my grandmother, and I first got my first looms when I was a child. My mother would try to keep me preoccupied at home because I never had homework. I was always one of those kids that did all my work at school or on the bus, and so she'd buy me these craft kits. And so my very first knitting looms came out of things like that. And so I've done all kinds of crafty things. I was in 4-H, had dairy goats, and danced, tap ballet all through. I taught.
Kept you busy.
For a while. I mean, I have like a vast just of everything, but but
we should just talk about your life. I just want to talk about your life now instead of loom knitting.
I know.
Tell me about the stories, goats and ballet. Come on.
And then I went to college and got a degree in math, and I almost got a degree in physics, but I decided I didn't like studying as much as I thought I would. And it's, I had all kinds of dreams and, hopes and whatever for what I wanted to do in my life. And then I ended up getting a chronic illness and had to go on disability. So, that is what brought me back to the fiber world and my yarn and crocheting and loom knitting, and so that's really where the journey for that began, and all of that coincided with the explosion of social media and YouTube, and so it's.
Have you always been a loom knitter, or have you also been a needle knitter? Because I noticed, I did a little Facebook stalking on you, research, and I noticed that you share the same philosophy I do, that anything can be knit on a loom. You can find a way to knit anything you want to on a loom that you can do on needles, and I feel the exact same way, so I loved that about you. I'm like, sister, yes. And, I definitely wondered, because in one post I noticed that you mentioned you have a lot of needle knitting books that you study from, and you translate those stitches onto the loom. And so I wondered if you'd ever needle knit as well, or if you were straight loom from the beginning.
Well, straight loom from the beginning. And I did take a needle knitting class simply so I could learn how the yarn went on the needles for knit and purl, to see how it works. Generally speaking, the other day I was having trouble, getting something through my head by watching a video of somebody knitting, but then it's all of a sudden it was like, oh well, I just needed to take a break from it and come back to it. But no, I've never knit with needles. I know a lot of the more common designers, like the published ones and stuff, they come from a needle knitting background and then they go into loom knitting, but that was not me.
You have some amazing designs as well. And when you mentioned that you were you studied mathematics and the sciences, and I think that this is one thing that I complain about, is knitting math is so much harder than regular math. Knitting math is the worst. And so I'm like, no wonder your brain works the way it does, and you come up with all these incredible things, because it's just stunning what you've been able to do.
Well, and I'm one that I love a challenge, and so I end up creating patterns that a lot of people don't even want to try, but
yes,
because they're complex.
Yes, but it's out there. If someone wanted to,
but it's
good.
out there. It's yes. And I'm proud of it. And it's I never thought I would ever be able to design it. I was one that was always, well, I could follow a pattern, and I never had a problem with that. But it was, and then just one day everything clicked. I mean, it just kind of like started falling into place, and for years I've been thinking on. Like I fell in love with the all-in-one loom by Knitting Board, and
it's a beautiful loom. Yeah.
And I was so excited, when the smaller sliders come out and things like that. But still, it just it never occurred to me that I would ever be able to think of something.
Well, I own a Flexi loom. I love it. Both Janae and I have been playing with your amazing Flexi loom. I've been using the Chunky, which is more of like a 5/8 inch gauge, and I made my first hat on the loom. And so a couple things that I noticed is, one, I do better doing one peg at a time for my cast on and for each of my stitches than when I have a traditional round loom that maybe if I was a beginner and I was always wrapping the whole thing, one peg at a time works better because then I don't have to worry about it collapsing or anything. And it was really easy. Once I started doing it that way, I was like, I really like this. This is nice. So that is super fun. I want you to explain, how is the Flexi loom different from a regular round loom? Because this is a podcast, so we can't actually show a picture. So can you explain, what are we talking about when we talk about the Flexi loom?
Well, we're talking about it is flexible. It will the pieces will rotate, but that's just it. They are pieces, and each piece has 2 pegs, so they snap together, and kind of like a snake. It will undulate, so to speak.
That's a perfect description.
Yeah.
How did you come up with this idea?
Once again, I even found the thing this morning, and I was like, well, that's not going to do me a lick of good, but it's a fidget toy that I had bought. My son is on the autism spectrum, and I had bought for Christmas one year, and they're real cheap off of, it was off Amazon, and it was like a set of 3 or 4. It was these, but these would have these little links that would rotate, and so you can click them in different directions and make little shapes and what have you. And I was just sitting fiddling with it one day, and then all of a sudden I thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice if that had pegs? And and of course the toy itself would go in, it alternates which direction each link goes. And so I sat down and I started sketching. And of course, my intent was that each link would have just 1 peg. And of course, I've never, had any dealings with casting molds and stuff like that with plastic, despite having worked for a jeweler, and I have cast gold before. But
more fascinating
the weird things Renita's done in her life
come out. It's amazing. It's a treasure chest.
So I had it all sketched out, and of course there's there isn't that many loom people. I mean,
loom companies. Yeah, loom builders, manufacturers. Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, I was already designing with Authentic Knitting Board, and of course, I don't have the money. Obviously, I don't have the money to do it myself, and so that was whenever I had just offered the design. Is this something that y'all would be interested in? And then it went from there. So
how long did it take for it to go from your son's toy and your conception and your idea of this would be great if this had pegs on it, your sketches, to asking KB if they were interested, to it actually becoming something that all of us can have in our and use for ourselves?
It was over a year. And so even once KB started talking to their people with the plastics and the molds. With the molds, having to develop a mold and everything, it was so hard for me to not say anything to anybody. It's but
it's such a brilliant,
it was over a year, idea. And I still felt like it was a bit rushed. Not that I'm not blaming anything. I was just because we had very little as far as patterns and anything done, and it was right there, and we're still in the middle of a pandemic, but I was afraid that it might not sell as well as it has so far with the way the economy is. But other than that, it was just over a year, so I really can't complain with it being released this year, because it's been one of my bright spots.
I think for a lot of people as well, it's something new and exciting that people can really grasp hold of. And a lot of us who are kind of stuck inside and quarantining as much as we can, it gives us something new and exciting to play with. And the innovation sparks that excitement and that joy inside of your head when other things are just feeling so bleak and sad. And so I think it's wonderful that it came out when it did.
Yeah, it's good timing, really. And I think we have a few questions that a lot of different customers and people ask. One is, how many kits can you use together? Like, is there a limit?
I really don't think there would be a limit, other than, your tolerance for how many stitches you're going to do across, and if you're looking at rows. But with the blanket, it's you just keep connecting them. And yes, with blankets too, you get the weight after a while. Mm-hmm. But as long as you fold it up before you try moving it, and you don't try to just hold it up by the loom, because people are accustomed to being able to just hold their loom up and say, have pictures made or see how long it is or anything. Well, you really can't do that with the Flexee loom. But as long as just keep on connecting it and just go on down the street and just knit back and forth.
And right now you have 2 gauges available.
Yes.
Are there plans to have more gauges coming out? And can you use the different gauges together? Can you mix them together?
Well, first of all, let's go with the 2 gauges. There's the 3/8 and the 5/8. So skinny and chunky. Those two, because of the way that the links are made, they cannot connect to each other. But obviously, if you've got the same gauge, then you just keep on snapping them together, and it's as long as you can buy kits, you can snap them together. But as far as more gauges, I would love to have it in all of them.
All the gauges, please.
Extra fine gauge, fine gauge. The between, I don't know how labeling it between calling it skinny and chunky gauge would go, but I would love to have it in all of them. I'm hoping. I don't know yet. We never know. It's just the, but the possibility of it. I think too. It will depend upon how well they sell, and it's. Boy, my brain just went blank again.
Oh, that's fine.
It's like I get going and all of a sudden it's like, nope, there it went. It's all gone.
Okay.
That's a creative mind.
Something that I think is interesting is that we have both straight links that don't bend and the curvy links that do bend. So why are there both, and how do you use those when putting it together? What's the best way to use the different kinds?
Well, personally, I'm not as I help. The straight links were part of what the knitting board group people decided to put in to try to and it does to add more things that you can do with it. Now, the number that, because there's not as many straight links as there are the rotating links. So if you're setting up your loom, then it's like every third every third link you would put in a straight one. It helps with as far as even in working in the round or whatever, give it a little bit more stability. Me personally, if I'm doing any project at all, I've got enough kits, I use all rotating links, and I just leave the straight ones out for now. I've got them divided up.
Would the straight links be sturdy enough for double knitting or weaving purposes, maybe?
They can be used for some weaving purposes. I've done even normal potholder size with the like what y'all use for. Oh boy, I sounded very southern there. The CinDWood loom. You've got the pro.
The pro loops. From Harrisville Designs. Mm-hmm.
Right. So you with the chunky, and I have not released this one yet, but it is pending. But I can make a normal size pot holder with just the straight links that is in the chunky set, and make a normal size, a 7-inch pot holder.
Oh wow, that's great.
With that, because then they're not too tight. Mm-hmm. Because once they get tight, they will try to bow inward. But yet, of course, that won't affect pot holders, really. Of course, and then my little finger pot holders that I did, seriously, I'm bad with names.
Oh, I love those little finger pot holders that you made on your Flexee loom. So they're like, let me just try and describe these. So they are, you put them on your fingers and your thumb, almost like you're making a little puppet. And then you're able to grab like your pot out of the oven or different things, and you don't burn your fingers.
Microwave bowls, people. Microwave bowls and plates. Yes.
So,
it's so brilliant.
My air fryer, so I use it all the time with the pulling trays out of my air fryer.
So many uses for those little things, and they're tiny and convenient, and you could just have a bunch of them in the kitchen
and quick to make. Those, I think those wouldn't take a long time to make on your little weaving setup that you created for that. So I love that. That's fantastic. So you're right that right now there's not a ton of patterns that came out when the Flexee came out. There wasn't a large number of patterns that came out with it. But we're seeing more and more.
Yes, and especially as people find it and love it, and that's another thing. I know that not everybody does like it, and that's fine. I'm not one of them people that expects everybody to love it, and it's no, or I'm gonna change your mind, because it's not. I know that, but yet it is an option. It gives the loom knitters of the world another option for a type of loom. And while I am not one to do a lot of simple patterns, which apparently is my downfall when it comes to, getting a bunch of people behind me going, "Oh, we love her." No, I'm not saying people don't love me, but
people love you. People love you.
But it's I don't do a whole lot of simple stuff, because for me it's there's so many already out there. There's so many people that are already creating that's simpler stuff or beginner easy that people can learn and they can use the flexi looms as long as the gauges, match. They can use any pattern on the flexi loom.
It doesn't have to be specifically for the flexi.
Right. It doesn't have to be for the flexi loom, but if those gauges match, and it's not an odd peg count, because I know that has been mentioned about even possibly doing a 3 peg. I don't know, that's still something that's being discussed. Of course, me personally, I don't really see a need for having, a whole huge selection of patterns that would need in the round and odd number.
Mostly just the spiral. People want to do those spirals. We get that same question because at CinDWood, we converted most of our looms to even numbers because you can do so many more combinations of patterns. And we did that quite a few years ago. But every once in a while, we still have people, I need a 51 peg, or I need a 41 peg, or I need a 61 peg. And we will custom design one of those, but we don't keep them on the website because I agree that the number of patterns you can do with those odd numbers is much less and fewer than when you have an even.
Yeah. But more gauges and some 3 peg, what do you call these individual things? Links. Thank you. Some 3 peg links. If you're listening, KB, the knitters want them. I'm just saying, I don't speak for everybody, but
that is true. And also, something that I've thought about is putting out like a survey as far as colors go. Do people like having it in like 2 colors, or if there was to be say a special edition issue of even just the gauges that we have now, would you want it in a specific color? Because I know that people are very they love their colors, as with CinDWood with your pegs.
Well, and also
everybody likes the personal, right?
The different colors also makes it so if you were doing a 2x3 pattern or a 2x2 pattern, the different colors, I think, was brilliant that you had them come out in 2 colors kits, because you're able to put those together and then you don't have to mark your loom or necessarily use stitch markers. So I found that as a fantastic marketing and great choice as a loom builder, is that it came in 2 different colors. So if you came out with more colors, I would buy them. I like
that. I thought that was brilliant as well, because you can kind of bypass that extra step of now have to put stitch markers on every set, sets of 2. You can automatically just set up your loom that way. But this brings up another kind of question that I've noticed pops up very frequently when anyone posts a picture of their flexi looms. And I posted one where I had taken mine and put it in the shape of a heart and then in a little square. And I know that this question comes up, and it comes up on different shaped looms all the time, and you've addressed it beautifully in the past, where if you put the flexi into a certain shape, is that the shape that your knitting will come out as? So if you have a heart-shaped flexi and you knit a hat on it, will you have a heart-shaped hat? No.
Of course, we know that you would have to actually do some shaping on those points to try to enforce the knitting to, but as long as you're going in the round, it doesn't matter what the shape the so-called round is, which doesn't make sense even mathematically, but it will come out as a tube.
Yes.
It will be a circular tube. So,
yes.
But yet for weaving, it will, you can weave with those type of shapes.
So you can use the flexible nature of this and put the links in any shape you want, and then weave them into that shape.
Yes.
Which is great for people who weave, because now they don't have to buy a specific loom for a specific shape. They can take their links and create whatever their brain can come up with, which is amazing.
Yes, they can. And it can also, it couldn't be on a large scale, because it's like, I didn't mention about the double knitting. You can only do just maybe 8 stitch sets at a time with double knitting because it is flexible, so it won't, hold a sturdy shape.
So it would work good for maybe a sock or a slipper, possibly.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Yeah, but just for double knitting, you can't go very long on those. But with weaving, even the smaller shapes, I know there's a lady that has been doing some pin weaving, and then I guess you can do things with those, but they're still smaller.
Right.
You'd have to do something else with them. It's just, unless you wanted just a bunch of little squares everywhere.
I just love that our imagination can go wild with this thing. Like the minute I saw it, I was just like, oh, I think this is brilliant. It's just brilliant.
It is. And one thing Christy and I were talking about was she loves making blankets and Afghans. And for her, like, one thing she mentioned is she can fold this up and take a blanket with her, where before you can't take a huge S-loom with you. So the portability of it, even on big projects, is really phenomenal.
It fits in the car so much better than my 60-inch S-loom, I'll just say.
Yes. Or even working on it, I was just like, making the blanket and the loom itself, of course, with the blankets all across my legs, because I'm always in my recliner watching TV. Yeah, that's how I spend my days. But anyway, and then I can just move the loom
amazing.
around. Yeah, so the loom just goes around and it constantly shifts its shape. So I don't have either a long loom that is like out across each end of the recliner, and then whenever I go around the end, I have hit myself in the head before with the 28-inch knitting board loom. I have, or the Afghan looms, I have hit myself in the head before shifting those around. But with the Flexee loom, you don't have that problem. So.
I've hit myself in the head with big looms, just holding them without any knitting on them before. So
it does happen. Hazards of being a loomer.
Yes.
Are there any tips that you could give that someone picking this loom up, if they're new or they've been knitting on looms for a very long time, that they might keep in mind when they first get their Flexee loom?
I would say don't get discouraged, especially if if they have used looms before. Don't get discouraged with them because of the way it does. It flex and turns. It's like Christy, you were saying earlier, I always work one peg at a time anyway. And even if I'm doing E-wrap, just kind of adapt. Because it is completely different. For new people, I would say this would be the best, because it can go anywhere from extreme beginner to all the way up to advanced, because that was my point, was to create something that everybody could use. And it's not just, well, it's a large gauge loom and then the round, and then you're just limited with what you can do with it.
But you still could do something like that. You still could use it as a simple round loom.
You can start out with making a hat, but you can also expand to doing shawls and to doing cowls, and you can expand to doing laces. And I mean, I love that.
Cables, all of
those things.
Complex.
So amazing. Okay, so Renita, where can people buy your amazing Flexee? Name some places we can get these.
Well, obviously, CinDWood Looms now has them on their website. You can buy it directly from kblooms.com. You can also find them in some Hobby Lobby stores has them. And I think there's more, hopefully, craft stores like Joann's and some others that will be getting it. You can buy it on Amazon as well.
Lots of places to find the Flexee if you want to pick it up. Yes.
And I encourage you, seriously, go out and get a Flexee loom, get a 5/8 or the 3/8, whichever gauge you like. You will not regret it, and you will have fun Renita, thank you for joining us today. We're so glad.
Thank you for having me.
It was wonderful to talk to you. I loved it. I want to hear everything about your life now.
Seriously.
I have so many things I want to hear.
Now we just need a whole thing about Arkansas dance classes. We need to go in.
Goats,
living on a farm, cows, dairy, goats. Hey, I have stories.
I believe you.
Well, we'll have you back for storytelling with Loomers, and it will be
okay.
Great.
Oh, that's a great idea. I love that.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you later. Thank you for joining us today, everybody. Happy Looming.